Hello, nerds! Thank you once again for watching Generally Nerdy. This is your week in Nerdom Music Edition for the week of Christmas 2017. Merry Christmas, by the way, if you are so inclined to celebrate. This week in music, we're talking Jonathan Davis from Korn, Gnarls Barkley's putting out a new album, and the Gorillaz are working on a new album. So before we get into all that and then the other things as well, let's cut to that intro.
Quiet on the set, rolling.
Hi, I am Bitsy Telek.
Hey, I'm Hale Appleman.
I'm Walter Kane.
I'm Rene Aubergenois. Odo on Deep Space Nine.
Michael Dorn, Lieutenant Commander Worf, Star Trek The Next Generation.
Come and see me and hear me and talk to me and listen to me talk about myself.
Hey man, this is Kevin Smith, often considered generally nerdy, and you are listening to what is often considered generally nerdy.
On Generally Nerdy.
You're listening to
Generally Nerdy.
Generally Nerdy.
Generally nerdy.
So, Jonathan Davis this past week announced that the solo record he's been saying he's going to do for the last 10 years is actually going to happen. It's, at one point it was going to be called Jonathan Davis and the Fucking Amazings, I think was the name of the band that he was calling it, but that's not happening now. Some of that music that he wrote 10 years ago for that project is going to be in this, so since he's been working on it for so long, hopefully it will be good. My money is it will be more Korn music. This happened, Fieldy has put out a couple of solo records, and one of them was a hip-hop record, but the other one was kind of Cornish. And when Head was making, when Head was making music, his music was kind of Cornish. And then a few years ago, totally different band, but Jeffrey Nothing from Mushroom Head put out a solo record, and it sounded like Mushroom Head. And I know as an artist you want to believe that you have different stories to tell and you have this different voice, and I just don't believe that Jonathan Davis is that artist that actually has that voice. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing. I dig Korn to an extent. Just not. Yeah. I don't think he's that good of an artist. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see. It should be done. He said he's got a little bit of time left to work on it, about a week, I believe he said. No, that wasn't this story. That was Gnarls Barkley. He said it'll be done this year, though, and it'll be out this year. So we'll see if his voice is really that different than when it's in Korn proper. So moving right along, we're going into Gorillaz, the other bit that we teased in the intro for this. We're getting another new record from them already. Usually they do a 5-year break in between their albums, and it seems they have a lot more to say this time. This kind of goes along with what we talk about on the Obscene podcast about how these artists that are so against the man and fight the power and all that stuff don't really come around that much when we're in a democratic-led situation. It's only when we have a conservative in the White House that we get a lot of music. So, I'm grateful for it for that, but I think that's bogus motivation. I really love Gnarls Barkley, we're not on Gnarls Barkley yet. I really love Gorillaz. I really, really love Gorillaz. They've only put out one record that I really can do without, and that's the Plastic Beach record, because it's reggae, and reggae is subpar music. I'm sorry, stoners. But, I actually didn't really like the last record that much either. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't their best. I feel like they'll never be better than they were on the first record, or even the G-Sides album was some good stuff, even though it was mostly remixes, but still. Good, they do good stuff, so I'm not doubting that. And the second record they did, the name of it escapes me at the moment, but also some really fantastic stuff, and Jamie Hewlett, the mastermind behind the Gorillaz, says that this because the last record was political, he's got a lot more stuff to say along those lines. So we might get this record that they're going to put out, or they're going to start working on at least in 2018, and then they're going to do a short touring cycle, and they'll likely do another record following that. So we very well could get 3 records very close together from the Gorillaz, which is fine. I really dig the music. It's just I can't get behind the motivation for it, but whatever. That's not for me to comment on. No, I can comment on it. It's not for me to pass judgment, I guess, but whatever. So yeah, looking forward to some Gorillaz music next year, which will be fantastic. And then we're gonna go. I have two bits that are really kind of annoying, so I think I'm gonna save those for last. What we're gonna do is we're gonna skip again into the Gnarls Barkley that I keep forgetting that I'm not talking about, and to finally talk about it. Gnarls Barkley has been working on a record. I didn't catch wind of this until this week because CeeLo said that he and Danger Mouse have about a week worth of work left to do for this record. He said they're about halfway done, so that doesn't strike me as a week's worth of work, but Danger Mouse is pretty brilliant, so maybe halfway, maybe it does take 2 weeks to write and record an album with Danger Mouse. I don't know, but either a week or a month or something like that. They're going to jump back in the studio after the new year, and so we should have that by the end of the year. Should be I think it's about a 3-month turnaround for recording before you get to the final product that's then mass produced. So I'm super stoked for that. It's been about a decade since we got that second Gnarls Barkley record, and that's some groovy. I mean, I usually talk a lot about metal on the Week in Nerdom, but I really dig good anything. If it's whatever genre, if it is a fantastic example of that genre, I love it. And Gnarls Barkley is definitely a fantastic example of R&B, hip hop, whatever you want to call what they do. Their urban sound. It's fantastic, and I really can't get enough of those 2 Gnarls Barkley records, so to add a third one to that will be fantastic. This also means that whatever legal issues CeeLo was having not that long ago have been cleared up, so that's always good as well. But yeah, now we're into the parts that will probably consume majority of the time. The first one, which will be the shorter one, Tim Lambesis. For those of you who don't know who that is, there was once a band called As I Lay Dying, who were a Christian... Alright, so there was this thing in the early aughts where it wasn't necessarily Christian music, it was just Christians in bands together, is kind of how they sold it. So it's not that As I Lay Dying were singing about God necessarily, but they were all Christians, and they were all in a band together, and they just happened to make music. And some of it was slightly religiously tinged, but they didn't sell themselves as a Christian band. But the lead singer, Tim Lambesis, was probably the most outspoken about his religion when they were popular. A few years ago, right about 2013, Tim Lambesis got arrested for hiring a hitman to kill his, at the time, estranged wife, now his ex-wife, thankfully. So, yeah, very weird, very, very strange situation. He only did 2 of his 6 years in prison, and he's been out for about a year. He recently, the reason we're talking about this, he recently issued an apology on the As I Lay Dying Facebook page, which I would imagine has lied dormant since this happened, because the band kind of sort of disbanded. They didn't really disband. They got a new lead singer, and then they changed their name. So, what is an ex-attempted murderer to do with his life now that he's no longer in prison? Very strange. But, like, why do this public apology? Because in the apology, he's talking about how he wants people to leave his ex-wife and their adopted children. He wants people to leave them alone and let them live their lives, because what happened was him and they're not to blame. Like, nobody's blaming them for you trying to kill them, dude. So it's just a very strange thing. And he says that he's also not doing this for the publicity, and he's not doing this because he's trying to push some sort of music out. He's just doing it because he feels like it needs to be done. And that's a little silly. You don't need to take to this very public forum to make this apology. And he apologizes to management and to roadies and to everyone involved with the As I Lay Dying band, and he's not doing it for the publicity, but he's doing it out in the open so that everybody will cover it, and we're talking about it now, so maybe he is doing it for the publicity. I don't know, it's just a very strange event. This one I'm handing off to you guys. What do you think is the motivation behind this apology, if not to put his name back in our mouths? Let's talk about that down low in the comments. And then the final bit of music news is similar but not the same. This is runs a couple parallels to a couple of going themes that we've been talking about for the last few months. Daryl, sorry. I always call him Paul Palumbo, but it's Daryl Palumbo. And for those of you who don't know who that is, Daryl Palumbo is the lead singer of a post-hardcore band called Glassjaw. He also sings for a band called Head Automatica. Both bands I am a fan of. More so Head Automatica than Glassjaw, but Glassjaw's pretty good. I was turned on to Glassjaw after I found Head Automatica, so that would kind of explain why I lean one way more than the other. But he recently has come out and said he is sorry. He's apologizing for his sexist lyrics on previous albums. His band just put out a new record. I didn't write down the name of the record because that's not what we're talking about. But his lyrics previously have been, and like we're talking mildly misogynistic. He's talking about prostitutes and he calls them whores and really things that aren't in the current landscape aren't serious offenses. Just kind of words that a young man would use to make himself sound edgy or try and sound edgy. And that's kind of what he was early in his career, was a dude in a kind of sort of punk rock band, post-hardcore, if you are really into those subgenres, who was trying to stand out from a crowd. And in his apology, he's talking about how that wasn't inclusive language and how he feels ashamed of it. And like, I feel like it's wasted words. I feel like you didn't do anything wrong. Why are you apologizing to us? And even if you did do something wrong, so long as you show growth and so long as you show that you have learned from this wrongdoing, there's no apology necessary unless you actually hurt somebody, unless you've done something so incredibly heinous that there is legitimately an apology owed, but you didn't. That's not the case here. So why apologize for something you didn't do? Don't play those songs anymore. If they don't represent where you are currently as an artist, don't play them. It boggles the mind. And then the other part of this story, the other part of this that I wanted to talk about, is I got this news piece from a website called let's screw that. Let's not talk about. I don't know. I'm on the fence if I want to talk about this website. Yeah, screw it. We're going to talk about the website. Metal Sucks. MetalSucks.com is the website that I got this from, and about 70% of the time I really appreciate the stuff that they write on MetalSucks.com, but it is just like any other media outlet, it would seem. It is super, super commie left. The author of this particular, it was an editorial, so I got to give him a little bit of leeway. It was an editorial, so he kind of has the room to make off-the-cuff statements. But the author of this, and obviously all of the writers at Metal Sucks have pen names. They're aliases that they write under. But this one identifies himself as Joseph Schaefer. And in the article, he says that Daryl Palumbo has done 2 good things this year. Only 2. Because the man is defined by what he does in the public eye, apparently. And that's my first issue. But the 2 things that Daryl Palumbo has done good this year is his band Glassjaw finally put out a record, which they haven't done in over a decade. So legit, I'll give them that. That is a cool thing. That is a good thing. You're in a band, you are an artist, produce art, make music, do the thing that you do. And apparently it's good. I haven't listened to the record yet, but apparently it's really good. It's worth the 10-year wait. But the other good thing, according to Mr. Schaefer, is the apology, because we live in a landscape where apparently you're not a man unless you apologize for the things you've done wrong in the past, even if they're super minor things. According to the guys on metalsucks.com, at least. I can't get behind that sentiment. I can't get behind. And then later on in the article, Schaefer talks about how he still appreciates the music that Palumbo's apologizing for. So he's talking himself in circles. It represents a point in someone's life. This is representative of the things going in his head at the time. If that no longer represents you, then don't play that music anymore. And if you identified with this at a certain time, then recognize you identified with this at a certain time, and then show your progression if you see it as such. Don't apologize for identifying with something, for being a part of something. That's ridiculous. But then again, later in this article, Schaefer says that because he identifies with that music, he also identifies with bands like Converge and Dillinger Escape Plan and Pig Destroyer are the 3 that he lists specifically. I love the first 2 of those 3. Pig Destroyer's whatever, vegan crap. Vegan death metal, like, that's a whole other video. But he says that those 3 bands have made a living, at least in part, based on misogyny and abuse of women to some degree. And that, I feel like, is misrepresenting those bands. I can't honestly speak for any of the bands personally, but my exposure to those bands, again, aside from Pig Destroyer, although Pig Destroyer is freaking vegan, whatever. We're gonna ignore that. Converge, in their early years, when they were young and dumb, wrote songs about how horrible rape is. They didn't write songs about raping. They didn't write songs about how they are abusers. They wrote songs about how people get abused and that it's a horrible thing, that's a bad thing, that is not the thing to do. I don't see that misogyny that he's talking about, and that's my issue, because I really feel like Jacob Bannon would take large issue with that statement, because he's made it a part of his life to stand up for people that are in those situations. Also, Dillinger Escape Plan, I don't know that there's a coherent lyrical theme in any one of their songs. A lot of that stuff is so abstract. To see misogyny in there speaks more to the listener's state of mind than the singer's state of mind. So, again, misrepresenting this music that you love. I just can't get behind it. And then the other person I want to talk about on this website, metalsucks.com, is a guy who identifies himself as Axel Rosenberg. Doing the research for my Christmas article that I'm still working on for the blog, the Christmas music. He was talking about August Burns Red just covered Last Christmas by Wham. Their version is instrumental and incredibly heavy and very well done, and I appreciate it in ways that I can't express. Axl wrote a very small, like three-sentence paragraph about it, basically ripping them because their statement that they released as a band was from the bass player was the first thing he took issue with. Why does it matter which member of the band made the statement? And then his other issue is that the statement was the lyrics of the song are very depressing and they wanted to make it happier. So they hope their version of the song catches people and uplifts them in this holiday season. And he said he would never listen to the song because that doesn't make any sense. Well, if you listen to the song, it would make sense because there are no lyrics. You stupid. You are a music journalist. Do your job. But anyway, I am going to get up off my soapbox. Thank you for watching all the way through this video. This is your Week in Nerddom Music Edition. Stay tuned for the other video games, comic books, TV, movies, all of the things that we're going to talk about. We're going to hit a supplement this week as well. I appreciate you guys. You have no idea. www.generallynerdy.net is the website, so you can go read the blog. You can go find all the social media links. Patreon.com/generallynerdy is where you can go help keep this running. Just $1 a month is all you really need to do, and that helps me in ways you can't even understand. So if you appreciate what I'm doing here, check that out, or just click that like button. If you are new to the channel, click the subscribe button, and if you don't like this video, click the thumbs down button. Just looking for some back and forth with some people. Let's talk about the things that we talked about in this video down low in those comments as well. And before you go, guys, before you go, I have to remind you that always remember, if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.